Hey guys, Kakarot197 again. This time with a review of the figurized standard Lacus Clyne from the Gundam Seed anime series provided to me by my favorite online hobby store, Hobbyling Japan. Links to buy your own peace-loving, Gundam-stealing pop star down below. And considering that my first, and up until I built this thing, also my only Gundam girl that I've built, is the Super Fumina N variant, I gotta say that I was quite impressed with this thing. The first thing that I wanted to know was, how does the face look? Because in promotional pictures, they're of course going to try to make it look as good as possible. And, well, they did a good job. Not perfect, but perfectly acceptable. And if you don't like the pre-painted and pre-stickered face, you also get two blank faces, one frowning and one with an open smile, that you can then easily paint yourself and apply the provided waterslide decals onto. And what was also quite good here were the seam lines. They're either non-existent or difficult to spot, with one giant exception. The seam line on the thigh stands out like a sore thumb, and it is quite obvious from the outline that this design is either for a character wearing thigh highs or a character that has spandex shorts. At least it's covered up when you go for her canonical long skirt. What I'm also not a huge fan of is how the joints look. Now, this is always going to be a trade-off on a humanoid figure, but I simply feel that Kotobukiya's figures, Figma's, and even previous Figurizes have done it better than this one. As for the stickers then, all of the yellow lines that you see on her clothes are stickers. Understandable considering how small of a detail it is, and it does look okay enough. This also means that the only thing left to paint is yellow for the Haro. And while you're at it, you might also want to consider gold for the stand and her hairpin. It's not quite the cheapo gold that I was afraid it was going to be, but it's also not coated either. And talking about coating, top coating this figure might not be a bad idea either. The plastic shine does give it somewhat of an uncanny feeling that is not present on figures or models with a matte finish. So straight out of the box, the presentation is fair enough, and with a bit of work, you can definitely make her look great. So now let's have a closer look at some of those accessories that we're getting. First of all, there is no Lacus figure without her Haros. And I gotta say, for how small these things are, they are pretty damn nicely engineered. What I was really surprised by was that the eyes are actually attached to the back part, so if you want to paint the eyes, it is actually super easy to do so. And then other than this one having his ears opened and this one having his ears closed, there's actually two other differences between the two. Now this one has a flattened out bottom, so you can simply place that one on the ground without having to worry about it wobbling off. Then this one has a rounded surface at the bottom, so it's not designed to go onto the ground, but is instead designed to be held by Lacus. Now, one thing that I also noticed when I was building it is that it has hollow parts, so I thought maybe it's going to slot into the hands, but nope. You just get two quite normal hands to hold onto the Haro, and you kinda gotta maneuver it around so that you don't see the hollow parts. And talking about hollow parts, there's also some on the bottom of Lacus's shoes and in the back of her neck. So even though there's a few, at the very least they aren't very visible. Then we get two more hands, a right closed fist hand, and then for the left we get another open palm hand. And together, you can either make her look cute, or about to throw down. And then the final feature of this model kit is, instead of adding something, we can take something away. There we go, all ready to have a look at the articulation of this figure. Now, I do want to say that even though this skirt does look very limiting in terms of articulation, they did have a very interesting way of engineering it so that it's actually two parts stuck together with the ability to move somewhat. Although moving this too much does sound like a good recipe for disaster. Then moving on to Miss Clyne herself, the head is on a double ball joint, but you gotta be careful when you move around the head. The thing is, all of these strands of hairs are on separate ball joints. We've got 4 ones in the back, and then there's 2 in the front, and especially the 2 in the front are quite fragile, so you gotta be careful when moving those. Then the shoulders are on the usual hinge and ball joint combo, at least for the figure rises, so it'll go up nicely all the way, down all the way, will rotate around all the way, and also go a little bit forwards and backwards on that ball joint. Then on the elbow we get a quite interesting joint, because rather than the usual double hinge joint, it is now a hinge and ball joint combo as well. So not only does it do the usual movement, but it also takes care of some outwards movement and also the rotation movement. Then the hands are on the usual ball joints, will wiggle around, turn around, and do everything a ball joint does, but just be careful to not disconnect the piece that's inside of the sleeve. Then we get some more ball joints on the torso. We get some nice forwards movement, backwards movement, side to side movement, and we'll of course also rotate around. And then the legs go a little bit forwards, a little bit backwards, because they are of course hindered by that quite solid skirt. The outward movement is basically the same. They'll rotate around on that very obvious seam line that I pointed out in the beginning. We get a very nice double joint on the knee. And then finally the feet will go up, down, and also rotate around. So as expected, the articulation is quite hindered by the skirt, even if you opt for the mini skirt. But let's face it, nobody got this figure for kung fu action poses. And on the flip side, I will give this figure credit for the ball joint in the arms. It might not sound like a lot, but it definitely helps with the posing and also helps to give her that little bit of extra cuteness as well. And if you then combine that with the included action base, and you still can pull quite some interesting poses with this thing. So as always, the inevitable question is, do you want to buy this? And well, there's kind of a yes and a no to the figure. As someone who has built Kotobukiya girl figures, I cannot say that this is a great figure. However, I can and will say that this is a good figure for a good price. So if you're a Lacus fan and you want her as a model kit, this is totally worth picking up. She looks good enough as is out of the box, and she can look fantastic with just that little bit extra effort. In addition to that, she comes with a nice array of accessories too. And although I know that I'm a bit late to the party with this remark, I'm definitely happy to see that Bandai has learned from the Super Fumina debacle, and I'm now definitely more open to more of these figures in the future. So then, for some size comparisons, here she is next to the Kotobukiya Jinrai and the Super Fumina Titans version. Like I just said, it is definitely nice to see how far they've gotten with their faces. Now they just gotta push it that little bit further. And then finally, here she is next to the standard size Gym Custom and the always bulky Zaku 3. And that has been all for the review of everyone's favorite Gundam stealing pop star. If you want your own, links down below. As always, a big thank you to the Patreon supporters. I hope everyone watching has a great day, and I'll see you all next time.